So I'm scrolling through Twitter last night and I come across this tweet that I think is so worthy of analysis. And whether you're a liberal or a leftist or somewhere in between, I think that the takeaways from this conversation can help us build a framework for how to respond to Republicans in the 2026 midterms and beyond. So in this tweet, Maine writes, Zohran ran a way better campaign than Obama, bruh, lol. And Jay responds, Obama won Indiana, shut the hell up. And then this person at the bottom writes, Bro, how bad was John McCain's campaign? I was 5. Frankly, I think it's sort of a waste of time to try to figure out who had a better campaign. At the end of the day, both Barack Obama and Zohran Mamdani are both trailblazers. I think it's important to remember that successful political movements don't really exist in vacuums, right? There's always all kinds of shit going on. There's always things that are going to happen. But the most successful candidates are the people that can capture that lightning and sort of run with it. And what Barack Obama and Zohran Mamdani have in common is that both of them hyper focused on their opponent's weaknesses and they met the needs of the moment as well as the changing attitudes of the time. And I know this sounds sort of like duh, but it's not that common. I think that what made Hillary and Kamala's campaigns unsuccessful was that there was always something sort of missing from each person, right? Hillary especially didn't really focus a lot on economic issues, whereas Donald Trump did. That's why he won over a lot of working class voters. Kamala Harris, the big issue there was Palestine, right? Like that was a big thing. That and the economy. I think that Donald Trump spent a little bit more time focusing on affordability, which is what made Zohran Mamdani's campaign so successful, is that Zohran Mamdani hyper-focused on affordability and Cuomo's weaknesses. So let's go back to 2008 and let's talk about why Obama was so successful in his presidential run. Because it wasn't just Indiana that Barack Obama won. Barack Obama also won Iowa, and he also won Ohio, and he also won Florida. He won all of these states. I mean, it was a total blowout. John McCain ran a terrible campaign. The person that responded at the end of this quote tweet that says, did McCain just run a terrible campaign? He did, but it wasn't always bad. It really wasn't until mid-September 2008 that John McCain sort of started trailing behind Obama. Up to that point, especially from March to September, like it was pretty neck and neck. It really wasn't too far apart. Part of why Barack Obama was so successful in 2008 is because of the momentum that Democrats had after the 2006 midterms. They completely wiped the floor with Republicans in that election. Just to show you some of the numbers, I mean, in the 2006 midterms, the Democrats gained 5 seats in the Senate and then gained 31 seats in the House. The Democrats just had this massive blue wave. They now have a crazy majority in the House, and they have picked up a bunch of seats in the Senate, and they cut into the Republicans' majority. The Bush, after the 2004 election, continued doubling down on all of his bad policies. So he kept doubling down on the war in Iraq, which was a big reason why Democrats were so successful in 2006, was because Republicans, not just George Bush, but all Republicans were pretty much in favor of continuing feeding the war machine, whereas Democrats were a lot more opposed publicly because of it. And so this gained them a lot of support and popularity. They continued doubling down on this strategy going into 2008. And Obama wasn't the only winner of the 2008 election. Democrats won big. I mean, they had 2 big blue waves in a row. In the 2008 election, Democrats came up with 8 additional seats in the Senate and then 21 more seats in the House. So now they have 257 seats in the House and 57 seats in the Senate. I mean, we haven't had numbers like this in a very long time, right? And like I said before, John McCain did run a bad campaign. He made a lot of mistakes along the way, and some crucial mistakes towards the end of the campaign trail. But it was pretty neck and neck from March to September, and then something happens in September. Do you know what happens? There's a huge financial crisis. A subprime housing mortgage crisis happens, and now all of a sudden, all of the economic policies of George W. Bush are put under a microscope, and they really affect John McCain. And like, he didn't really do that good of a job of like distancing himself. One of the terrible, terrible ideas that George W. Bush had that John McCain was like fully in support of was privatizing Social Security, which is something that like Republicans are still running on today. Could you imagine if George W. Bush had privatized Social Security and then 2008 financial crisis happens, Democrats would have had a supermajority in the House and the Senate. But it wasn't even just the financial crisis that really sets Obama and McCain apart. It's the fact that John McCain had no course correction. He pretty much wanted to follow the same policies as George W. Bush, and Obama really went after him for this. John McCain really has never met a war he didn't like. He was a traditional neocon in the same way that other guys like Lindsey Graham, Ted Cruz, like these guys. It sort of came down to the fact that John McCain had no vision for getting us out of Iraq and Afghanistan, whereas Obama did, and I think had a lot of failures later on in the presidency when it came to that, obviously. But at the time in 2008, McCain had like no intention of pulling us out of Iraq and Afghanistan. In fact, he wanted to double down, and Obama seized the opportunity. Obama made himself the anti-war candidate, which that ended up not working out that well because he started a few new wars. And during the debates, like John McCain would try to paint Obama as some sort of like somebody that's green, somebody that's a novice. Whereas people at the time had plenty of reasons to be skeptical of the war in Iraq and outraged by how much money was being spent and how many American soldiers were being killed abroad. That didn't really settle well with the voters. You don't have to be a foreign policy expert to realize that war is bad. Like, you just don't, right? Now with the economy, going back to that, obviously the 2008 financial crisis happens. McCain's solution to everything was typical of what you would expect from Republicans, right? It was like people were losing their homes. Well, McCain's solutions to the economic crisis were deregulation and tax cuts for the rich, which deregulation is what got us to the financial crisis to begin with. And this is what McCain wanted to double down on, was more deregulation and more tax cuts for the rich, as if the rich needed any more tax cuts after getting bailouts in 2008. That was ridiculous. And Obama really capitalized on this. If you heard Obama's speeches from back in 2008, the guy sounded like Bernie Sanders. Big talking point of his was tax cuts for the middle class, tax increases for the wealthy, not letting corporations have a say in his campaign, which that ended up not being a fulfilled promise, and then obviously just giving more relief to the middle class. And a lot of people, that resonated with a lot of people, right? That it would make sense. And the exit polls really sort of reflected the fruits of Obama's labor, because the biggest issue that voters had going into the election in 2008, according to exit polls, was the economy. It was 63% of respondents said that the economy was the most important thing. The second most important issue for voters in the 2008 election, according to exit polls, was the war in Iraq and Afghanistan, which, again, Obama painted himself as an anti-war candidate, whereas John McCain really couldn't help himself. He loved war. And now with Mamdani's campaign, a lot of it is stuff that Trump talked about in the 2024 election. Trump ran on affordability. Before he was called that, he ran on groceries. Groceries, it's a beautiful word. Groceries, it's an old school word. And Trump has made the issue worse. So in a lot of ways, Trump's failures as a president have been the fact that he's completely gone back on this one campaign promise, which the economy is always important for the vote. And Mamdani did in what a lot of ways Obama did in 2008. He just runs with the failures of the candidate that he's going up against at the time. And I know that Mamdani was going against Andrew Cuomo and the establishment, but in a lot of ways, these issues happened because of Donald Trump, and gave Mamdani a lot of ammo to sort of feed the campaign. And it really resonates with the voters when a candidate listens to what the electorate is saying. The electorate right now yearns for affordability, healthcare, and then stopping the ICE Gestapo. That's what matters to voters right now. So Democrats have a lot of things to fulfill right now. They have a perfect platform to run on, because Donald Trump has failed in every single way in his presidency. And I think that the situation that we find ourselves in right now is almost a perfect mirror of what it was like in 2006 and 2008. So I hope that Democrats listen. I hope that we can bridge the gap between liberals and leftists, and I hope that we can figure it out. And I think we will. We have we know what to run on, right? There's polls for a reason.